here's the bottom line. The terrorists around the world, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and their offshoots, didn't get the memo that the war on terror is over. They still hate us. They are plotting and planning to attack us, and we have to be on maximum guard.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do, Congressman Walz. Mike Walz this morning on Fox. He's right, you know. And welcome to 2025. It is the Chris Plant Show. Chris is on holiday. It's Mike Opelka sitting in for my buddy and trying to get to everything. Michael Piercy is here. Jasmine's on the phones. And you, of course, are tuned in, and we appreciate it. Welcome to the new year. 18 days away from Donald John Trump being sworn in again. And, of course, we're covering everything that will lead up to Donald Trump's inauguration, including the news that broke yesterday. Mr. Trump's going to have a victory rally the night before the inauguration, right there in D.C. So there will be a pre-inauguration victory party, which is kind of cool, I guess, for a lot of the fans, and we'll see what happens on that. And then, of course, we have the upcoming speaker battle that's going to happen in the House. The vote is tomorrow. We'll talk about that. But the headline story, obviously, since yesterday morning when people were waking up after their New Year's Eve to the news that New Orleans had been the subject of a terror attack by a guy who drove a truck, a pickup truck, a Ford electric pickup truck through the streets of the French Quarter, murdering people. 15 dead right now. Dozens more still trying to hang on to life. And the killer is gone. He fired on cops, and the local law enforcement appears to have dispatched him, saving a lot of people a lot of time and money. But now we have to figure out why and what. And there's so many questions as to why we weren't told immediately about the ISIS flag that was on the back of the truck. It instantly was seen. People saw it. People were talking about it, but it was covered up, which is really bizarre. Why can't you tell us? We're all grown up and haired over. We understand. We can handle the truth. So it would have been nice to know. It would have been nice to hear the story. And we heard so much that was conflicting and different and throughout the day. And there were many, many speculative reports appearing on social media, which is why I always tell everybody, don't jump to conclusions. Do a little bit of your own research. And then wait until we get actual confirmation. There was a press conference very early in the morning yesterday where we were told by the superintendent of the New Orleans Police Department this was a terror attack. And then we were told by the FBI it's not a terror attack. And then we were told it is a terror attack. So it's easy to see why people get frustrated. It's easy to see why people don't trust the information they're being told by the people we expect them to tell us the truth, because we're all grown up and able to handle it. In fact, we'd appreciate the truth every time. It's troubling. It's very troubling. Senator Kennedy was one of the guys who also made sure, and we played this clip very, very early on. Senator Kennedy made sure that we all knew that he was going to be asking questions. He was going to be demanding answers. He was going to be telling the people of the country if the FBI was, he said, I'm going to raise fresh hell if we don't get this straight up answers from the FBI. But they were obviously not going to answer a lot of questions at the presser, and they're just trying to shut it down. And then last night, after we'd been through 3 press conferences in New Orleans and the postponement of the Sugar Bowl, which was supposed to happen yesterday, it's kind of hard to hold a big bowl game when you've still got bodies on the streets in the French Quarter, and they did. It's a horrific reality to think about that. My wife asked me yesterday when we were talking about this, before they had announced the delay of the game. My wife said, "What do you mean there's still bodies on the street?" I said, "Yes, it's not CSI. They don't take them away right away. They actually have to preserve the crime scene." There were people who were told they couldn't leave their homes. We were told there were people who had to stay in some of the bars and restaurants immediately afterwards because there was not certainty that a follow-up attack wasn't about to happen. So there was a whole lot of unknown, even more yesterday than we know. We know a little bit today. But it looks like the Sugar Bowl is going to go forward this afternoon. I'm still thinking maybe that's not the best idea. Maybe that's not the most respectful thing to do for those people. But after we got the initial press reports that kind of told us a little bit about what's going on, and then we heard the story out of Las Vegas where a Tesla Cybertruck exploded in front of the Trump Hotel, and only the driver died. There were 7 people who were injured in the explosion. It was a pretty large explosion, but the Cybertruck seemed to retain its structural integrity. And as one automotive expert told me during the break this morning, yes, it's a bad idea to use the Cybertruck for a car explosion. We've already seen how strong it is. Elon Musk showed us the thing is bulletproof. Remember when he first debuted it? He stood on stage with a gun and actually fired at his own vehicle, showing us it's bulletproof. And Musk himself pointed that out when he pointed out the explosion of the truck was probably diminished by the strength of his own vehicle. It's kind of interesting that he would weigh in on that. But we hear about this exploding Cybertruck, and then we heard, and we talked about connecting the dots and the coincidences. Both drivers, former members of the U.S. military, both drivers with electric vehicles, both drivers rented the vehicles using the same app, Turo, which allows you to rent from individuals. If somebody's got a car and they only use it 2 days a week and they're out trying to make money, they can rent it through this Turo. And how odd is it that both of these guys rented their cars through that same app? There's going to be a lot of speculation, a lot of discussion on this. But the President of the United States, even though he may or may not know it, the President of the United States was at Camp David because he went from the vacation in St. Croix to the vacation in Camp David, and then he's going to be going off to a vacation in Rome, because it's Vacation Palooza, the last 20-plus days of his presidency. The president did take 4 minutes out of his life to speak to the nation, and it did cause a little trouble in our house because in the Opelka household, every night at 7 o'clock, we have a fierce Jeopardy battle between my wife and I. It's been going on for 30 years, and it's pretty even up right now, but we turned on the tube to watch the Jeopardy, and it's the President of the United States. Now, thankfully, he only spoke for 4 minutes. But did we learn anything? Did we learn anything at all from the President of the United States? Let's dip into cut one.
I know I can speak for all Americans when I say our hearts are with the people of New Orleans after the despicable attack that occurred in the early morning hours. To all the families of those who are killed, to all those who are injured, to all the people of New Orleans who are grieving today, I want you to know I grieve with you. Our nation grieves with you. We're going to stand with you as you mourn and as you heal in the weeks to come.
Yeah, he's right. I mean, that is the presidential thing to do, is to tell the country that we're with you. Tell the city of New Orleans that we're there. Joe also had some words for the first responders.
I want to thank our brave first responders and law enforcement personnel who stopped the attacker in his tracks before he could kill or injure even more people. And I want to thank you to everyone at the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Justice, including the FBI, working nonstop to investigate this heinous act.
It seems like he's just kind of phoning this one in. Yeah, he's doing the right thing. But it just feels like it's empty to me. And maybe I'm imposing my own opinions of the man on it. But we didn't really learn anything, did we? Did we? Let's hear what he said about the attacker.
The FBI also reported to me that mere hours before the attack, he posted videos on social media indicating that he was inspired by ISIS, expressing a desire to kill. The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack.
Well, we know he rented the truck. We don't know if he rented it specifically to conduct this attack, but I'm just thinking we didn't learn much of anything. If you listened to the 2 p.m. press conference, we learned a lot more, and maybe that's not the job of the President of the United States. But he did warn us about, jumping to conclusions.
The ISIS flag was found in his vehicle, which he rented to conduct this attack. Possible explosives were found in the vehicle as well, and more explosives were found nearby. The situation is very fluid, and the investigation has a preliminary stage. And the fact is that right now, there you go. The law enforcement and intelligence community are continuing to look for any connections, associations, or co-conspirators. We have nothing additional to report at this time. The investigation is continuing to be active, and no one should jump to conclusions.
Now, he lost his place somewhere in the middle of that 43 seconds, and then suddenly went, here you go. It's almost as if the teleprompter froze, and then they found the play button again and got it rolling. Oh, there you go. But he could have opened the event with that final statement, saying there's no new information, but our hearts go out to you, and we will commit every bit of resource to solve this problem, to get to the bottom of this. Would have been nice. I'm just saying. I know I'm really tough on the president, but he's still the president, and if he's not capable of being the president, he should get the hell out. I know what that means. Yes, I fully understand what that means. President Word Salad would be in there. The empty pantsuit would be there. And where is she? During the campaign, she used to stand in the background whenever he was making an announcement. I guess she's just phoning it in now. She can't do any harm. But we will keep everybody posted on everything that comes out of this. And we will see if any of the odd connections, the coincidences between the two former service personnel who were both involved in terrible acts. One that took the lives of 15 people, one that took his own life in front of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. They served on the same military base. Both military individuals, both in electric vehicles, both rented from the same app. Coincidences? I think not. What say you? 888-630-9625 is the number. It's Opelka in for Plant on the Chris Plant Show.
Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris.
It is the Chris Plant Show. Happy New Year. Mike Opelka in for my friend Chris Plant on this second day of January, 18 days away from Donald Trump being sworn in again as President of the United States. And we're trying to cover everything in the news. And there are some big stories that we will still get to, like Speaker Johnson. Will he be reelected? We'll talk about that. But we're focused on the terror attack and what the heck was going on in Las Vegas. I want to make sure I speak correctly. The guy that got blowed up in the Cybertruck is active duty military. He was on leave from Germany, a special forces operator, which makes it even more curious. But we'll get to that. We'll get to that. A few of you are calling in at 888-630-9625. Matt is in Rockville, Maryland. Hello, Matt. Welcome to the Chris Plant Show. Matthew?
Yep. You got me?
Yes, sir. You're up, sir.
Okay. So the first thing that crossed my mind with we saw that the ISIS flag was being covered up. One of the first things that crossed my mind was back in 2023, a man, I believe it was a U-Haul truck, tried ramming the gate of the White House. And an FBI agent went in and pulled out a Nazi flag and unfurled it right on the sidewalk, all of its folds and everything, as if it was just purchased or maybe stuffed in his own jacket. But it seemed weird because it seemed like they wanted to push that narrative, right? These were the same people who were looking for white supremacy in the military, and they wanted to push a narrative. They willingly brought out that flag and displayed it for the world to see and was talking about white supremacy. So why did they unfurl that one yet cover up this ISIS flag? It seems really strange to me that they're trying to push one agenda yet hide another. And as a little bit of an aside, we really need to get rid of these assault trucks, Mike. We need to put legislation in to get rid of them. There are too many attacks.
Matt, you are so right. The assault trucks that are, I know I shouldn't make jokes about these 15 people whose lives were taken, but yeah, this is what the left would do. Initially, when it came out that this guy ran down these people, there were also reports saying he started shooting. And we were anticipating the anti-gun crowd popping up, too. So, yeah, they would have popped up. Had this guy just driven into Bourbon Street and started firing and shooting at people, that's exactly what the debate would be today. So, yeah, you're right to bring that up, Matt. But thank you. That's a really good question. Why, in the past, have we made sure to spotlight any other flags like Nazi flags, the swastikas that showed up on the some of the vehicles, and they covered up this ISIS flag? Really, really a good question as well. Herb is in South Carolina, Pendleton. Hello, Herb. I don't know how much time you got, but the floor is yours. Hello, sir.
Good morning, Michael. A couple of comments. As we've seen, the FBI is bumbling another investigation. I did see a news clip the other day of FBI agents working the site in New Orleans. It appeared to me that the majority of them were women. They had vests on, FBI on the back, all long hair sticking out all over the place. I believe the FBI has become another catastrophe with DEI. And I have nothing against women if they're qualified.
Herb, I'm going to cut you off because time is going to cut us off too. You know, just to look at a TV shot or a photo that somebody posts and say, there's all these women working there, that's kind of anecdotal. We don't know. There are a lot of men and women working the FBI. Now, is there DEI in the FBI? Yes, we know that's happening. Is there wokeness that gets somehow put on the front burner? Yes, we know. I don't know if that's necessarily the case in this investigation. It is the Chris Plant Show. Happy New Year. Mike Opelka sitting in for Chris until he returns on Monday. And boy, oh boy, do we have a lot of things to get to today. And as we look over all the stories that are bubbling around the terror attack in New Orleans, the explosion of the Tesla Cybertruck outside the Trump building in Las Vegas, we start seeing some pretty weird and curious things that are getting people angry, triggering, if you will. Governor Jeff Landry of Louisiana posted a photo last night of himself and probably his wife and a small group of people outside of Bonton Prime Rib restaurant. It's a very fine restaurant. And he says, ate dinner tonight in New Orleans, proud to be part of this incredibly resilient city. See everyone at the game tomorrow. And boy, oh boy, are people mad at him. This post had 4.1 million views since 8 o'clock last night. 4.1 million views and more than 6,500 responses. People who are not happy. They're not happy. They're saying, basically, how dare you? You have people who have been killed. Yes, they do. And he's also trying to make sure his city doesn't stop. But it's one of those that you can't win. You can't win. You're trying to show the world that there's no terrorism. If you let the terrorists win, then everything stops. This is kind of akin to what we were told after September 11th. You have to go on and live your life. You cannot stop living your life because of a terror attack. So I wonder if the outrage will be tamped down. And yes, there are 15 people who died, and maybe others will still succumb to their injuries, as there are about 30 still fighting in the hospitals. So I don't know if this is really the outrage. People can get triggered so easily on all this stuff. We are wandering all of the news, trying to make sure we keep up on everything. There will be a press conference coming up soon about the Cybertruck explosion, if anything comes of that. And it's interesting because the gentleman who died, and yeah, I'm using the term gentleman very loosely, the person who died in that explosion is active duty military on leave from Germany as special forces operator. There are a lot of questions that need to be answered. But Elon Musk was very helpful in the investigation, allowing access to all the data that the Cybertruck was putting out, from the trail where it was rented in Colorado to the explosion in front of the Trump Hotel, to the fact that an hour before it exploded, the truck had actually circled through the driveway and stopped for a moment and then came back an hour later before that explosion. Very, very curious, and the connections between the two incidents will also be explored. Many, many things to get to today, including, and we'll get to the Speaker Johnson election that's coming up. A couple of you are calling in to weigh in on this. Let's talk to Andy in Westchester, Virginia. Hello, Andy. Welcome to the Chris Plant Show.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good, Andy. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Just wanted to start off by saying, I pray for all the victims and their families, and I want to applaud our law enforcement for doing their job. Speaking of law enforcement, I've been doing some research on Kirkpatrick. She's the chief of police in New Orleans.
Yes.
And so I've been doing some research because the other day when I first seen her, I'm like, this is law enforcement. She's actually a law enforcement. And don't get me wrong, I mean, she, no worries whatsoever. But I was doing some digging into her background, and everywhere that she's gone, everywhere that she's been chief of police has been a cesspool of violence. She was chief of police in Spokane, Washington. She was chief of police in Oakland, which she was fired from in Oakland, California. She was hired in New Orleans. And just a little excerpt from the neworleans.gov website. It says, because I believe that she was a DEI hire to begin with. And this comes right from the neworleans.gov website. And it says, Kirkpatrick mostly recently served as chief of police in Oakland, California, where she implemented significant cultural changes in terms of increasing police accountability, transparency, involving procedural justice, implementing equity-based decision-making. That comes right from neworleans.gov.
Well, I think we see now, and we have yet to get any real report on what the superintendent's successes have been, because she really was only appointed to be the interim superintendent in September of 2023, and then the city council confirmed her. So she's been the superintendent for about a year, just over a year officially. But
exactly.
She doesn't have a stellar background. in terms of leading law enforcement agencies or leading a city police department. And in the case of Oakland that you brought up, she was fired, and then she sued them and won $1.5 million judgment.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. So once again, everywhere that she's went, she's implemented these DEI cultural shifts, and everywhere that she's went has been just a cesspool of violence. The other thing that I have found that was interesting on this website, which is NOLA.gov, and it says Kirkpatrick is a national instructor for the FBI Law Enforcement Executive Association Leadership Training Program, where she instructs on topics including but not limited to bias and diversity, emotional intelligence, and leading generations.
Well, here's the problem, Andy, and this is a problem that you've identified correctly, but it also exists all across the country. And wherever we had a city that or a county that was run or a state run by Democrats, blue states, blue counties, blue cities, we had a gigantic push for defunding the police and the Black Lives Matter initiatives, which we know were a scam. And it's going to take time, Andy, to get the pendulum to swing back fully. And we talked about it on Tuesday with Cori Bush being voted out of Congress. And she's one of the people who stood up there and said, suck it up. Black Lives Matter is going to have to be known to everybody, and police will have to be defunded. Well, that's now been defeated. But there are remnants of it. They're going to have to be rooted out. So until we get people in place. But you're right.
I wanted the viewers to realize that, because obviously Trump and some other conservatives have been ridiculed about DEI and it doesn't exist and whatnot. And here it basically is on their website, basically saying, yeah, this is what she's doing. The other thing that I thought there was
hold on, Andy. Not only that, last August, not 6 months ago, she was in a patrol car and hit 2 pedestrians with her patrol car while on duty. So there's kind of a bizarre irony in the case of a city where someone has killed 15 people, but the superintendent of police was involved in I'm sure that's been a very costly expense for the people of New Orleans as well. But yeah, it's a shame that we have so much DEI involved in positions that really should be loyal to the law and to the facts and not the feelings. But we focused on feelings for so many, many years that we're just catching up to it. But thank you, and Happy New Year. And I love doing the research. Thank you for doing the research, sir. Let's grab one more here. Craig is on Long Island listening to the Chris Plant Show. Craig, you noticed something while listening to Joe Biden yesterday?
Yeah. How you doing, Mike? Nice to talk to you. Yeah.
Nice to have you.
No, really, when you just played it, it just reminded me of I hate to say it, the Christmas Story. And the father is sitting there reading the newspaper at the table, and it says, some clodhopper in Indiana swallowed a yo-yo. And, like, the wife is like, that's ridiculous. And he says, no, it's in the paper. He reminds me, finally, after 4 years, I realize he's reading a newspaper, like a tear sheet that just came off the wire. And he doesn't know what's in it. And when I heard the audio, it just reminded me, it sounded like you said, it had no depth, it had no perceived empathy. It's just doing what he needs to do to check the boxes, as always. And
yeah,
I hadn't really thought about it in that sense, but the reason why I thought of that is, like, there's anyone that has a phone or a computer has the same amount of information that he had. We just had it faster than he got out with.
Yeah, we had it a lot faster. We had it out like 6 hours faster. And we learned nothing last night, but now I'm going to have to go back and watch that section of A Christmas Story and put those two together. Thank you. That's a very, very good observation on that, Craig. We appreciate you being there. Thank you. Happy New Year. I mentioned earlier, we played it earlier, Senator John Kennedy, who I think is one of the good guys, who's talked about making sure that we get complete transparency out of the FBI and out of all law enforcement as it relates to this investigation. But he also said something yesterday at the beginning of his remarks that I thought was really important.
For those people who don't believe in objective evil, all you have to do is look at what happened in our city early this morning. If this doesn't trigger the gag reflex of every American, every fair-minded American, I'll be very surprised.
A very emotional John Kennedy yesterday, Senator Kennedy from Louisiana, speaking at the press event in the early afternoon. It was about 20 after 2 East Coast time yesterday when there was just a little bit of information that was doled out. And John Kennedy promising that we will get the answers or he will raise fresh hell. And he means it. He's not kidding. We also had New Year's Eve celebrations that were on TV ahead of this, and something happened, not to diminish the terror attack on New Orleans, but something happened on CNN that I thought was really unusual. I'm not talking about the drunken stupidity that usually happened. Yes, we had that between Anderson Cooper and Andy Cohen on their New Year's Eve show.
25 is everything you
really
want
hoping
it
we
to
don't
be.
get fired.
Well, sweetie, I don't think you're going to get fired.
Well,
I think you're good.
I got a contract.
I'm going back
Maybe
to
you'll be
Bravo.
fired.
I'm going back to Bravo. That's cool. Bravo, here I come.
A slurring Anderson Cooper and a drunken Andy Cohen talking about their futures. But I said something truthful happened. Something really surprising happened. And I caught it. My wife and I were bouncing back and forth from a football game to the CNN show, and we actually caught a really surprising minute of a comedian who was roasting 2024. And I think this took a lot of people at CNN by surprise. If you haven't seen it, I'll share it with you. It is Whitney Cummings, and we'll get to that surprising bit of audio just around the corner. It's Mike Opelka in for Chris Plant on The Chris Plant Show. It is The Chris Plant Show. Happy New Year. Happy 2025. 18 days until the inauguration. And Donald Trump 2.0. Can't wait. It's Mike Opelka in for my friend Chris Plant. I mentioned there was more going on in the world. Yes, we are monitoring everything about the attack, the terror attack in New Orleans, the exploding Cybertruck in Las Vegas. We'll get to that. But I mentioned that the New Year's Eve broadcast on CNN surprised me. It really surprised me. And it's because comedian Whitney Cummings gave some really interesting twists to the year. She was roasting 2024 and said some. I absolutely stopped and said, hold on a second.
2024 election fried our brains. The Democrats couldn't hold a primary because they were too busy holding a body upright.
And there were some jaws dropping there when she said that. The Democrats were too busy holding a body upright to hold a primary. And I thought, wow. And she didn't let up there.
Are we still rolling? Am I off?
Go for it.
It was amazing that the pro-choice party didn't give their voters one when it came to the presidential candidate.
Now, I assume Whitney Cummings is a liberal. I'm not sure. But comedy is comedy, and that's funny. The pro-choice party didn't give their voters a choice. That's just good stuff. And that's what comedy needs to do. And she was doing it.
Kamala was forced on us so hard you'd think she was patented by Pfizer or Moderna, whichever one's... Oh, God. Andy just gave me a very scary look.
No!
Yeah, so she actually hit one out of the park there. Kamala was forced on us so hard You'd think she was invented by Pfizer or Moderna. That was unbelievable. But she wasn't done just there.
Let me be clear, though. 2024 was not only negative. The media wants us to believe this country is so divided, but we actually came together a lot this year. Like, as a nation, we unanimously agreed that we would rather see J-Lo in a toxic relationship than in concert. We all agree the government totally knows what drones are and are telling us. The drones are still up there, and we have no idea what's behind them. No idea. I mean, they're still up in the sky, so I guess we can rule out that they were made by Boeing.
Now, that was a double punch right there. The drones are still up in the sky, and the government knows what they are, and the only thing we can assume is since they're still up there, that they were not made by Boeing. That is a very deep joke. That's excellent.
The point is, I think we all agree on a lot of things.
We do all agree on a lot of things. At least I think so. I thought that was pretty darn good. And she went on to explain. I went and read a couple of the jokes that she said she cut for time. I was very impressed, and that's what comedy is supposed to do, is take on all of those supposed sacred cows and expose hypocrisy and contradiction. Just a thought. Let's grab a quick call before we wrap up this hour. Frank is in Chicago, I think, listening on the great WLS. Hello, Frank. Happy New Year.
Hey, Happy New Year. Yeah, from WLS here in Chicago.
Thank you.
I just listening to all the calls. You can obviously tell your audience or the audience for WLS are a bunch of older people, boomers. So they immediately run to conspiracy theories and think they don't understand certain technologies, so they react the way they react. But
wait, Frank, how so? Frank, you're making all kinds of assumptions. What do you mean run to conspiracy? What conspiracy theory do you think the callers are running to?
DEI by seeing a picture. One person just said he saw.
Frank. He went through her resume. There were people who made assumptions about the superintendent in New Orleans, the 65-year-old lady who is the superintendent of police. Some people were saying she's 82. I actually did the homework and looked up her background. But yes, the gentleman who called and went through her background, went through the history of her work as a chief of police and a leader of police forces in cities that absolutely had horrible records on crime. So there was no conspiracy theory there. We actually did something called facts versus feelings. And maybe that's something that in 2025 you could look into. I'm just saying. But thank you for calling, Frank, and thank you for listening on the great WLS. It's Opelka in for Plant on the Chris Plant Show.